Hello and welcome to edition number 2 of 3 of mARTian, a creative response to the fact that this week is National Astronomy Week. Last night we had some artwork from Emma Lloyd, poetry from Rachel Lightfoot and music from Dorothy Bird. And tonight it's the turn of two other musicians, composer and musician Luke Thomas, and then electronic music producer Michael Donoghue, aka Cosmosapien. But before we chat to Luke Thomas, I just wanted to reminisce a little bit. I've been a lifelong space enthusiast, occasional amateur astronomer, and it's always fascinating to look up at the night sky. For me, it's a primary source of inspiration. And I think that started very young. I was very lucky as a child to receive a copy of this, The First Guide to the Universe by Osborne Books, showing my age a little bit. But the pictures and the information on all of the different planets, this one's just for Mars, which is the theme for National Astronomy Week this week, inspired a lifelong love affair with the night sky. I'm just looking through this a little bit. And if we get to the page which inspired me most as a child, this panoramic view of the solar system, very important, not to scale, almost on every page. There we are. Pluto is the smallest planet and is made of ice and rock. Well, I think that's a little bit out of date now. Thanks, IAU, for that one. Anyway, without further ado, let's have a chat to the second guest on this series, composer and musician Luke Thomas. Hi, Luke, and how has lockdown been for you?
It's been okay. It's not been too bad. Yeah. I mean, no different from usual, just being in a dark room composing stuff. It's just yeah, normal.
So would you say as a composer and as a freelance musician, you were sort of pre-prepared for being locked away for a little while?
Definitely, yeah.
Well, Luke, we've known each other a few years now, and I've had the distinct pleasure of recording with you on a few different projects, some very cinematic work and a mixture of video games, animation, short films and theatre work. You've got quite the portfolio. Has that work carried on into lockdown over the last few months?
Yeah, I mean, theatre work, less so. Video games, though, I feel like, if anything, are doing better than ever, really, just because everyone, A, has more time on their hands, maybe, and B, just wants to have a bit of escapism and go to a different world entirely, which, you know, you can't blame them. So if anything, video games have been better than ever, really. So I'm really thankful for that. Yeah, but I've, you know, definitely collaborated a lot more recently, just because, especially when you're isolated as well, I think you just crave that collaboration more than anything, and just figuring out new ways to do that, especially when a lot of the musicians I normally would work with, you included, you'd be in the same room with them. So just learning how to reinvent that slightly and figure out how to remote record. But it's been nice to kind of try and do that with more people, I think.
I absolutely know what you mean about that human company. Can't wait to work together again. And that brings us seamlessly on to the last project we worked together on, almost as if it was planned. But Phil Skit Theatre did a children's show themed around astronomy, effectively, which ties in with this week's events. And I believe it was called Stellar. So just tell us a little bit about the show.
Yeah, so it was a theatre show for young children, and it was kind of about light pollution, mainly about how the skies are getting increasingly lighter, and you can't see the stars anymore, really. And it was just a way of portraying that to young children in a really magical way, hopefully. So it had a huge scaffolding set with these multiple LED lights on the set that were kind of the stars. And Phil Skit have used it in a couple of their shows where you can like individually control the lights. I think they're called like pixel LED lights. So we could do these crazy like effects with stuff moving around the lights, and then obviously how the music would follow it as well. So I think in the end it was quite like mesmerizing for the kids, this like trippy light show with this sort of heartwarming story about light pollution. And Stella, the main character, is a character that works on the moon, and her job is to keep all the stars in the night sky lit. And she goes down to Earth to kind of meet this girl and figure out how they can work together to light the night sky up again. So there was quite a lot going on. Yeah.
Really, really magical. You just said those words, set and stage, which are two things that I know we've both missed for the last 7 months, being in close proximity to physical things that are happening in a theatre.
Yeah, you take it for granted, I think, just being in the same room for something like that.
Am I right in saying that you've got that music available to listen to elsewhere?
Yeah, it's on Spotify, the whole soundtrack, which I've not really done it before for a children's show, because sometimes the music's so like integrated into the show, it doesn't really work as a soundtrack. It just sounds a bit odd. But the music for this at the end, we were like, oh, we were really happy with it, and we really wanted to kind of have it in a different form as well. I think especially now with lockdown, we're kind of glad that we did that as well, because it's in some ways one of the sort of remnants of the show until we can tour it in person again. Yeah.
So the next piece, almost going back in time, I think, the space theme permeating through most of the work, certainly of yours, I know, and it's a short animated film called Spice Frontier. So just tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think we're both really fond of this project in particular because it's just such a fun concept. So it's basically about this intergalactic chef called Kent, who's a human, but when the episode is set, Earth has long been destroyed many, many years ago, and a lot of the ingredients that they used on Earth have been lost. So the whole point of the show is every episode he's hunting down these spices throughout the galaxies to kind of recreate these lost flavors of Earth. So just as a concept, it was like so fun to create music for.
What was your approach and your process to accomplish that?
So first of all, just the different ingredients that they were looking for. Obviously, the initial thing that comes to mind is how musically it's sort of an analogy to that, where there's different music around the world as well, and how you can tap into that with the types of instruments that you use. But then the obvious difficulty of that is that you don't want to stereotype, because we associate certain instruments so strongly with certain cultures, it can become a bit pastiche and a bit overwrought. So at first it was kind of striking that balance of making quite an eclectic score, but not being cartoony in the portrayal of different cultures. And I think one early draft that I did of the music had this like French accordion, because I was like, maybe I'd watched Ratatouille or something like a few years ago or something, and it was just too much. And I think a couple of drafts I did were like, okay, this is as far as we're going to push it in terms of quoting different musical cultures, and kind of in the end, I think what tied it together was this sort of big bombastic orchestral sound, which just sort of tied all the elements together slightly. And I think one instrument that really jumped out actually in the end was at the time I was working on another project at Liverpool Museum when the Terracotta Warriors came to Liverpool Museum. Yeah. And I worked with this great erhu player, which is like a Chinese fiddle. And it was just pure coincidence, because I was working on that other project. I was like, oh, I should introduce this into Spice Frontier somehow. Yeah. And I think just because of the nature of the instrument, because it's only got 1 or 2 strings, you're sliding between the notes and it sounds really spacey. It sounds like a theremin or something. So I think that I was like, yes, that's like the perfect instrument from a different culture, but perfect that it doesn't stand out too much in the score, hopefully anyway.
Yeah. This is really super geeky, Luke, and I think we've talked about it before, but anyone tuning in might switch off at this stage. But that erhu player, I actually had met and had the pleasure of playing his instrument because he works with Pagoda Arts in Liverpool. Yeah. And every year I stage manage the Liverpool Rock and Roll Marathon that has music every single mile of the route. And Pagoda Arts were performing with the huge sort of taiko style drums and singer. It's always amazing. I love what they do. And he was there playing the erhu. And then a couple of months later, I was in the studio with you, and you'd had him play. And it's so difficult to play. My first instrument, for anyone that doesn't know, is cello. So no frets, and you sort of play that by practice, effectively. But trying that on something so unusual with the bow underneath the string, I think, was so strange. Yeah. And he just, it's such an emotional sort of evocative instrument as well. It instantly transports you. But I know what you mean about not being almost culturally appropriating sounds in a way that, you know, a lot of American sitcoms and animated comedies do, and it just feels so lazy as a composer to say, right, we're in France, there's an accordion. So I think you did really well to sidestep that.
But I think sometimes you kind of have to feel it out on the projects and figure out where the boundaries are. And once you've heard it, you're like, well, yeah, that's not that. And then you figure it out eventually. Yeah.
Well, the pilot episode of Spice Frontier was exceptionally well received and has been critically acclaimed. It's gone to a few festivals and got rave reviews. What was it like working with those folks remotely before any of this happened this year?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I suppose that because they're based in Florida, I'm based in Liverpool, so all the stuff I've done with them has been remote, so it's kind of ingrained in how we work together. And I think above all, the main creative team are animators first and foremost. Jalil, who's one of the creators, worked at like Weta Workshop and animated for How to Train Your Dragon and stuff like that. So where he kind of cut his teeth was in animation. So, and the way animators normally work is they'll put a temp track on whatever it is and animate really closely to the music, which I think as a result means he thinks about music really, really carefully and how it syncs up with every tiny detail of the animation, which just made my life so much easier because he just knew what he wanted and how it fit with the animation. And then my job was more to just kind of bring out the overall musicality of it.
Well, and the result was absolutely superb. For anyone that's about to watch Spice Frontier, and the link's going to come up here somewhere, you will hear the catchiest little theme for any animation this side of Thundercats, quite frankly. And I'm unbiased because I didn't write it. It's your work, Luke. It is amazing, and it just sets the tone for the thing perfectly.
Thanks, man.
It's been as ever wonderful to talk to you. So the links for Philskit Theatre's Stella will pop up any second now, and for Spice Frontier just now as well. They're both in the description. Please go and check both of them out. Luke Thomas is an amazing composer based in Liverpool, specialises in exactly this kind of thing. Is there anything else in the programme that you're looking forward to seeing?
I'm really looking forward to seeing Rachel Lightfoot's poetry. I think that'll be really interesting. I think we're all from quite different disciplines, so I think it's just interesting seeing the contrast. Yeah. Fantastic.
And one last thing, have you got a random space fact to share with us?
I do. I have one that you told me when we cut away seamlessly, that if you put every planet together, you'd be able to fit them in between the Earth and the Moon.
That's fantastic. I did not know that you knew that.
Every day's a school day.
Absolutely. Well, all of the National Astronomy Week webinars and presentations are available over on YouTube. So I would encourage everyone to go and check those out. There was an amazing one with artist Luke Jerram earlier this week, whose Earth globe was in Liverpool Anglican Cathedral recently. These huge, incredibly detailed representations of the Earth, Moon, and other planets as well. But Luke Thomas, it's been fantastic to talk to you.
Thanks, man. Can't wait to see you in person again soon.
Yeah. I've missed your coffee, definitely, and I'm looking forward to working with you in 2021. Always a pleasure to chat with and work with Luke Thomas. Do have a listen to his music. It's incredibly moving, really, really well produced. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And talking of music, that brings us seamlessly on to the final part of this slightly shorter edition of Martian, which is a curated playlist by Cosmosapien. Now, Cosmosapien is an independent composer of left field electronic music who makes electro soundscapes with synth hymns and EDM confronting sci-fi musical ambience. I'll be back same time, same place tomorrow for Martian, the final edition. It's a bumper one featuring R&B cellist Satin Beige and some of her poetry, and also featuring singer-songwriter and actor Reed Anderson, who's got a real surprise ready in store for you, and a whole host of musicians backing him up too. See you at 2100 UTC Sunday night. Bye for now.